everyone, welcome back to the Be Nice Yoga online studio. My name is Krista and today we're moving through a Yin Yoga practice. So if you're new to this style of yoga, we work through probably about 5 different poses where we hold them for 3 to 5 minutes. So this is a very slow practice, it's a restorative practice. It helps us drop deeper into the tissues and fascias of our body, moving right through the superficial muscle tissue. Okay, so this is a really great practice to help lengthen our muscles. It's a great practice to help balance out the yang practices like flow or if we're working out. So before we get started, I'd like you to make sure you have all the props that you have at home nearby. So I like to have a bolster, blanket. I'm sitting up on a meditation cushion just for elevation through the hips and seated. Then I've got a block, a sandbag, and a strap. Now I'm going to show you variations without all of these props and give you suggestions on what you can use instead of a bolster and blanket. So if you have a big pillow at home, you can use that. You can also use just any blanket that you have. For a block, you could use a big book. Now, we want to make sure if we are using that as a modification that it feels safe for us. But I do recommend getting as many props as you can at home to make your practice more supportive. So props aren't necessarily a way to decrease intensity. Actually, a lot of the times our props can increase sensation and increase intensity. So they're really wonderful to have. I recommend you going out and grabbing at least a bolster and a block would be a great place to start. So let's begin our physical practice just by finding a seat. I always like to recommend rolling the shoulders down the back, softening the eyes here. And then just with the hands resting on the knees, we're going to allow ourselves to relax through the face, relax through the shoulders, taking some time just to ground down through the sitting bones, finding our breath. Our intention for practice today is to transcend fear and step into love. This is something I've been working on over the past week or so in my own practice and in my own studies. So today our focus energetically is to transcend fear and move into love. But on a physical level, we're going to work through our chest and shoulders. Probably some hip stuff as well. So let's just continue to breathe softly, allowing ourselves to fully come into the space that we're practicing in, fully coming into our breath and our bodies. So the reason I chose the topic of fear to love is I feel like a lot of us are experiencing a big amount of fear right now. Of course, with everything going on in the world, it can feel overwhelming. It can create anxiety, depression. So all of this stems from fear. And it's not to say there's any shame in those feelings. But there's a lot of lightness and grace and ease and peace in finding love in this hard time. So today with our heart openers, our breath, and our intention, we're going to try to focus on the aspect of love. Spend a few more breaths grounding down. And then just to release our meditation breath work, we're going to drop the chin to the chest, blink our eyes open, and then notice ourselves coming back to the space. So to begin today, we're going to find ourselves in a reclined butterfly. Now this position does require some sort of pillow or support for the back, so I recommend you having that nearby, please. And then making sure you have something to sit on like a blanket for the hips. We're going to come lengthwise on our mat, sitting onto a blanket for support, and then bringing our bolster back behind us. So connecting the base of the bolster to the low back, going to come straight out, and this posture focuses on the chest and shoulders. So first, before we lean back over the bolster, we want to find ourselves in a butterfly position with the legs. Feet come together, knees drop apart. We're feeling into our hips in this pose as well as the upper body. Now, grabbing onto the bolster, making sure it's connected to the low back. We're going to tuck the chin and very slowly lower down onto our bolster. As you arrive here, you can feel your full spine releasing onto the bolster, arms out beside you. Now your hips may be quite tight, and if butterfly is too much, you can also just straighten the legs. And that's a beautiful option. So we're going to hold our reclined butterfly coming into chest, heart center, and shoulders for about 3 minutes today. Just using my phone here to set a timer. Beautiful. So as you arrive here, I want you to notice how you're feeling through your front body. Maybe a little bit uncomfortable, maybe a little bit intense right away. Use your breath to help surrender and soften into these areas of tension. If there's any pain through the low back, we come back up to seated by rolling off and then just resetting, using more support under the hips. Whenever we find ourselves resting, you can soften the eyes and really invite that sense of peace and ease within you. So there will be moments of this practice where you feel silence. There is a little bit of music in the background, but overall it's quite quiet. If you notice the mind starting to wander into thoughts, let's focus on our breath, on our heart center, and on the energy of love. We're about halfway through our reclined butterfly position, so making sure you're checking in with your hips, your low back, your chest and shoulders, noticing if you need to change any sort of position at all. Let's spend about 5 more breaths here in our heart opener. Beautiful. So the way to release out of our reclined butterfly, now this is very slow movement. What we do is find our feet planted, knees bend. The hips are nice and heavy here. We're noticing that release through the hips. A few deep breaths. And then very slowly, we're going to roll over onto our left side, creating a pillow with the left arm, using the right hand so that you don't tip over too fast or hard. And just resting on your side for a few breaths. Pressing your right hand into the mat, straightening the right leg, and then just coming up to seated. Take your time. We're going to come into seated facing the front of our mat, and then grabbing our bolster from behind us and pulling it out in front. To counter our reclined butterfly, we're going to move into a forward fold butterfly. Feet together, knees drop apart. Again, long diamond shape with the legs here. I like to use my block to stack up onto my feet, and then use the bolster to stack up onto the block. We're creating a bolster bridge here for our chest and belly. I always recommend to use elevation under the hips to help you come up and over the pelvis. Okay. Take your time here to find your alignment, and then very slowly we're going to walk our hands down to frame the feet, lengthening out through the spine as we rest belly, chest, and your right cheek can come to the mat or to the bolster first. Again, I'm just going to turn on the clock here. For 3 minutes, we'll hold this one. I love this pose for the low back, for the hips, as well as the shoulders if you allow them to soften. Giving yourself permission to close the eyes and really rest into this forward fold as best as you can. Now in our forward fold, like I said, it's hips and low back, but you may also experience some openness through the inner thighs and hamstrings, just depending on how tight you are, how open you are, as well as how long your diamond is in the legs. We're about halfway through, so feeling free to switch to your left cheek, please. Now, as we continue to hold our butterfly pose, I want you to notice what's happening through the back of your heart center. Okay, so right in the upper back area. As we curl forward, you may feel it opening up. Maybe a little release of tension or stress in this area of the body. We've got about 5 more breaths here in our forward fold. And then again, very slow release out of this forward fold by planting the hands, lifting up gently through the chest, and then walking up, rolling the shoulders down the back. So we always move out of our yin poses nice and slow. Releasing your bolster back behind you, your block off to the side, or actually to the back of the mat, I should say. We're going to pull our knees together, our feet walk in towards the hips. We wrap the arms around the knees and curl the head forward. Okay, again, that nice full body or full back body curl. Beautiful. Let's release that counter stretch. So we're going to come back into our chest and shoulders. The reason there's a focus on chest and shoulders right now, just so you know, is that Sitting at home at our at-home workstations are probably not the best for our posture, and this is a nice way to counter some of that curling forward through the shoulders. So what we're going to do is take our bolster, this time the same way as the mat, and then take our block to the very back of the mat. Actually, like it on its medium setting. Now, if you don't have a bolster at home, or something of this shape, I recommend either rolling up a pillow or a blanket to create a similar shape. We're going to make sure that the bolster is secure, that the block is secure, and continue sitting onto the blanket here. Walking the feet straight out, or the legs straight out, feet are flexed. What we're going to do is slowly lower back onto the bolster, coming into our chest and shoulders. So the bolster should be right underneath the shoulder blades. Okay, it may take a few times to try, making sure we engage the core to protect the back here. You can lower your elbows first, tailbone tucks under, and then sliding the elbows out as we slowly, I'm just gonna grab my phone here, as we slowly lower back. Now finding the block resting under the head and arms just out beside you or out in front. So you may have to come up, reset the bolster, and try again depending on how you're feeling. This should feel really nice for the chest, for the shoulders as we release the arms out beside us. I love this one. I've got another 3-minute hold here. So making sure that we feel supported in some way underneath the head. It doesn't have to be a block, it can be a pillow as well. And then again with the low back, we don't want any pinching or pain, so if you need more support under the bum, you can roll up your blanket or even sitting on a pillow, meditation cushion. This one is quite intense, so I want you to be really mindful about how you're breathing through the intensity, how you're opening up your heart space and trying to surrender to that intensity. Heavy hips here, there's no clenching through the glutes or the low back. We're about halfway through this hold, so again, making sure you feel healthy intensity and sensation through the body. Got about 3 more deep breaths here into the chest and shoulders. Beautiful work, everyone. So what we're going to do now to come out of our reclined position over the bolster is we're going to walk our feet to the mat just like we did in reclined butterfly, finding the feet planted, knees bent. We're going to take our hands out onto the thighs. Now, you can either roll yourself off to the side, although the bolster sometimes gets in the way, or you can use the strength of your core, tuck your chin, and roll back up to seated, grabbing the knees and finding yourself in that counter stretch, curling forward. Nice, let's release our counter stretch and we're going to come into a forward fold once again to balance out. Okay, so I want you to grab your bolster, bring it back out in front. Block can come as well. We're going to straighten our legs out in front of us. Now I'm going to give you two variations here of how to use your bolster or your pillow. I like the option of bringing the bolster under the knees because I have very tight hamstrings. So this is your first option, bolster or pillow under the knees, and then a very gentle forward fold, resting the hands on either side of the legs. Second option, if your hamstrings are more open, is to straighten the legs completely, bring the bolster out in front, and then tilt forward, bringing the bolster, your head to the bolster here for extra support, hands beside the legs. Okay, so you choose your variation. I'm going to come back to the first one with my knees supported here. And then once again, let's breathe here in our caterpillar pose for a few moments. So noticing this beautiful caterpillar pose, release through your full back body line. So even a little bit into the calves, depending on your variation. Definitely your hamstrings, your low back, and then all the way up the back. Okay, allowing yourself to be heavy through the chest, heavy through the belly. Take a few more breaths here in our forward fold. And then finding the hands onto the legs as we slowly inhale up to seated. Arriving back in our tall spine. A few shoulder rolls here. And then planting the feet so you can remove the bolster. We're going to bring it out in front. We're going to do two more poses today and then moving into our rest. So let's cross at the ankles. We're going to roll forward into tabletop, please. Now, I always recommend having a blanket under your knees when you're in tabletop for extra cushion and support. And then just arriving with the hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips, toes untucked, and hips just sway side to side. Taking some time to maraud the body around. And then when you're ready, we're going to move into a heart opener, shoulder opener pose. Now I want you to make sure you have something that can support the arms, if you'd like, out in front. This is called puppy dog pose with the chest opener component. So hands find your pillow, knees are in line with your hips. We're just going to walk ourselves forward, dropping the forehead towards the mat, please. Now, this can be a very intense pose for your upper back and shoulders. If it doesn't work for you to have your hands on a bolster or pillow, you can also take the bolster and bring it under your chest, hands towards the mat out in front of you. I think I'm going to stay here today. We're here for just a few moments. And a few more breaths here. Now, I'm going to show you a variation that doesn't require any props other than some support under the knees if you'd like. It's just walking the arms out and bringing your chin or forehead towards the mat. Let's take about 3 more breaths here, please. So to release our puppy dog pose, just slowly pull yourself up. Hands come back under shoulders, knees back under hips if they came apart a little bit, and then straightening one leg back at a time, finding some length behind the legs, behind the knees. Let's come back to our knees, please, and slowly sit down onto the heels. So we're going to come into one final pose, which is going to be our rest pose, and that's going to be our supported child's pose. You do need a blanket under the knees. A bolster for under the chest is a nice option. I'm going to show you it, and then I'm going to come out of it and walk you through your rest in child's pose. So let's grab our prop and place it out in front. Knees come as wide as the blanket, please, and then walking the bolster in between the knees. We're going to lengthen out through the spine and slowly walk ourselves forward. Belly, chest, cheek arrive on the bolster. So making sure your hips are nice and heavy. We're coming into the outsides of our hips, maybe a little bit into the shoulders if you can feel them. And then breathing here, closing the eyes. So again, I'll give you a halfway point. Just going to set my timer there. I'll give you a halfway point where you can switch your cheek. Noticing what's happening through your hips and low back. how you're feeling energetically in your child's pose. This is a great posture to come into to help relieve anxiety, especially if you're able to ground down through your forehead. So today for rest, I'm going to read you a very short passage from the book A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. This passage is all about the idea of moving from fear to love. Okay, so just continuing to rest in your child's pose. Eyes are soft, hips are heavy. We have been brought up in a world that does not put love first, and where love is absent, fear sets in. Fear is to love as darkness is to light. It's a terrible absence of what we need in order to survive. It's a place we go where all hell breaks loose. When infants aren't held, they can become sick and even die. It's universally accepted that children need love, but at what age are people supposed to stop needing it? We never do. We need love in order to live happily, as much as we need oxygen in order to live at all. I love this passage from the book A Return to Love because it reminds us the importance of love. And it gives a great comparison between love and light and fear and darkness. What we have to do over the next coming weeks is turn the light on, because then there is no more darkness. We need to show up in love and erase the fear. Let it go. Making sure you've switched sides with your cheek if you're resting one cheek on the bolster. We've got about another minute here to hold and to rest. Got a few more breaths, just continuing to soften and relax. And then finding yourself slowly and gently coming out of your restful child's pose. Hands planted to the mat as you press back up to table, very mindfully, very slowly. Taking as many breaths as you need to stretch the body, straightening one leg at a time, moving through cat-cow or marauding around. And then we're going to cross at the ankles, rolling onto the bum to close our practice in seated, hands on the knees, just as we began our practice together today. Arriving in your tall seat, eyes closed. Let's take a breath in to reach the arms up to the sky, press the palms, and exhale, float the hands to the heart center, bowing the head forward. Take a big breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. May we express the wisdom of our true selves. May we be reborn with every season. May we listen to the whisper of our hearts, and may we be blessed by inner illumination. May we be guided by the universe. And may we find our way home together. One more big breath in and out. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you for a beautiful practice. Namaste. Thank you everyone for joining me in that From Fear to Love Yin Yoga practice. For more free online yoga classes, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Be Nice Yoga. Thank you.